Alrighty, in this lesson, we're going to look at code.org, computer science discoveries, unit 3, and some parts of lesson 4. What did I just do? We're going to go through a couple of the bubbles, but not every single one. I still want to leave, some chance for you to experiment and try things out. But I just want to get you a little bit of a kickstart in case you're having some issues getting started. So the overview for this lesson is that we're going to extend the drawing skills that we saw in lessons 1, 2, and 3 to include width and height, so you can change the size of your shapes. And we also introduce the concept of a random number generator. And really, this starts to get to the idea of variables that we'll be starting to see in a couple lessons. We're going to learn how to draw ellipses and rectangles, including the width and height parameters, which is a big idea that we're also getting coming up. We're also going to look how to use the background. And eventually, at the end, you're going to make this kind of like little snake that wiggles around. Anyways, it looks cool. We're learning here. So the vocabulary today for today is parameter. It is a piece of information or an extra piece of information passed to a function to customize it for a specific need. So a function is, well, here we have new code, and actually all 4 of these things here are what we call function calls. A function is a block of code that's predefined, and we'll see, we'll get to functions much later in the course, but just to get a little idea of it, a function is a little block of code that's predefined that does some function, right? It has something that it does. And then you call it by doing one of these function calls, and then it will go to that block of code and it'll do that work. And it's just a way of staying more organized and even kind of hiding some information. So what makes this class more introductory than my other class is there's a lot of pre-built functions in here. There's always a lot of pre-built functions, but there's a lot for visuals, and you get to make a bunch of cool stuff because a lot of the hard work is hidden inside those functions. Anyways, I'm getting on a tangent. Let's get moving. I'm gonna do bubble 2 and 3 with you guys. All right, yeah, I'll just go along as I see it. So, bubble 2 is our first interactive bubble in this lesson. You can tell because it's a circle over here. And so I just hit run, but let me actually go through and read this a little bit. So the first bubble here we're looking at here for the instructions is rectangle size. So these RECT rectangle blocks have 2 more parameters that you can use to control the size. So in the previous lesson, you would have seen rect with only 2 parameters. Now we see it with 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters, 4 different things I can input into the function to tell it what to do. So these extra parameters it's saying are used to control the size of your rectangles. Notice that no stroke parentheses, that function, that block turns off the stroke or border for shapes. So you can see in the image over here, there's no border around them, right? They're the cartoons where you have like the little border around the characters, and there's some that are a little more stylistic, and it's just color and then the background. So no stroke does that. It gets rid of that drawing, the little outline around it. So for this, we're going to look at the code and try to figure out how the last 2 inputs in rectangle work. Oops, I think I gave that away a little bit, but we'll play around with it. Change the numbers in the second rectangle block to make the red rectangle longer than the blue one. So it says to mess around with the last 2 inputs, the last 2 parameters. So I'm going to zoom back to normal over here. Let's get rid of our instructions. Can I zoom in a little bit? Yeah, that's not too bad. And I'm going to just play around with this. So this 100, what the heck? Maybe I can't zoom in because it resets. This 100, I'm going to change it to 50. I'd recommend, by the way, when you're trying to play around with things in code.org, which you're asked to do a lot, only change 1 parameter at a time. If you change 4 things, you don't know what changed what, right? So if I only change 1 thing at a time, I get to learn what it does. So let's see. On line 1, it said no stroke. On line 2, we just had a blank. It's just to space it out nicely. Line 3, we're filling blue, and then we draw a rectangle. So probably I should be looking at this blue rectangle over here as I hit run here to see what changes. So I'm going to reset, and I'm going to run. And if you were looking at the blue rectangle, you should notice it looks like it got a bit thinner. So it looks like this third parameter changes the width of a rectangle. And so I'm going to assume that this one over here is probably going to change the height, right? The first two change the x and the y coordinates, and then this third one was the width. So I bet this is the height. So I'm going to make this 20, and let's find out. Absolutely, right? And so that's, if you ever have a function, you're not sure what it does, or a block, you're not sure what it does, just play around with every individual parameter or argument or input, whatever you want to call it, and just see what it does, right? If you forgot what these first two do, I could just say, all right, let me make this 3 and see what happens there. It looks like this first argument changes where it is in terms of left to right, or the x coordinates. And if I make this, I don't know, 200 instead of 100, that changes the y. And don't forget, as my y coordinate goes up, the shapes on the screen go down, because 0, 0 starts here. It's weird. Sorry, that's just how it is. Okay, cool. So played around with that a little bit. Let's double check the instructions and see what's going on. We just play around with the arguments inside here, the parameters, but let's see what they want us to do. They want you to change the numbers in the second rectangle to make the red one longer than the blue one. Okay, well, I played around quite a bit with this, and it's like all freaky. So one thing I'm going to do is I could try to remember what this was at the beginning, but you can also go to version history on the right there, and you can go back to things from the past 10 minutes. You know, I did this a while ago. That's why there's one from 2 years ago. But I can also just hit start over to get back to where I was. So I'll show you. I'm just going to go back to this version from 10 minutes ago and see what it looks like. So 10 minutes ago. Oh, this looks like it's back to what it started as, which is fine, right? It says change the numbers in the second rectangle block to make the red rectangle longer than the blue one. So, okay, this was x, y, width, height. If the height of the blue one's 200 and I want to make this longer, let's make this 300. That looks like it made it longer. It doesn't look like the picture over here, but that's okay, right? You're just trying to do your best to do that. It doesn't need to be perfect. Though if you wanted to, maybe I'll make this 250 if you want to make it look just like that. 250, reset, and run. Okay, that looks closer to the picture, right? Okay. This might make the video a little bit longer, but I just want to talk about a couple things before we move on to the next bubble, just because you've done a couple lessons in this game lab version of code.org, but I just want to it's the first time when I'm making, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to make a separate video about that just to like go over the bits of it, because no, I'm going to do it right now. Changing my mind. So, super quick, by the way. This is the game lab, right? Your code is over here in this box. Here's your toolbox of functions that you're using for this particular bubble, or functions we've already learned about. We'll start like getting more and more blocks or functions to use. Here's your preview. You can hit reset and then run to see what you've changed in your workspace and see how it shows up over there. When you run code, it goes from the first line down just one at a time. So first it says, all right, we're doing no stroke. If I get rid of no stroke, let's see what happens. If I reset and run it, it draws a tiny, it's kind of hard to see, but it's now drawing a little black outline around it, right? So you can always just play around with blocks and see what they do. So the first line was saying, all right, we're getting rid of the stroke for everything. So when I run it now, back to just being like solid color, no outline. Line 2 is blank. It's just to space it out so you can like stay organized. Line 3, it says we're going to fill anything after this with the blue color. And then line 4, we made a rectangle at coordinates 100, 100, width 100, height 200. And also, by the way, don't forget you can show the grid. These coordinates for a rectangle, the 100, 100, as you can see, is the top left corner of the rectangle, right? So that happens when you're drawing it in there. Line 6 and 7, it just goes like that, and then, making the red rectangle, and then we get to line 8, there's nothing left, it ends. Last thing I'll say before we continue with this lesson is just if you know what, never mind, that's on the next one. Let's continue with the lesson. I am going to skip this bubble for time. I'm going to skip this bubble because it has an activity that I want you to try on it. Just one thing that I will say is there's a little challenge in bubble 4 over here. And where's the challenge? Huh? I thought there was a challenge here. Oh, I don't know. Whatever. Sorry. Going to bubble 5. Okay. There's a challenge somewhere that bubble 5 helps with. Let's look at bubble 5 together. Sometimes you will want to fill the entire screen with a single color. For that, you can use background. It covers everything on the screen with the color that you chose. So this just says, oh, the challenge is here. Oh my goodness. I think bubble 4 helps with the challenge. Whatever. Do I want to do bubble 4 instead? Run the code to see how the background works. Change the background from yellow to orange. Challenge, there's a purple square that's covered up by the background. Can you change the order of the code so that you can see both? Okay, I understand what I was doing. Gotcha. Okay. So let's just try running it and see what happens. So I see yellow background, a blue rectangle, and nothing over here, right? So let's look at it like one at a time. On line 1, it fills purple. On line 2, we made a purple rectangle at 50-50, which should be over here, but it's not showing up. Then we made a background that's yellow, which is why the background's all yellow. Then we filled blue and we made a rectangle at 250, which is why that blue one went over there. So if I want to change the background color, I can just change from yellow to orange, right? Easy enough. And if I reset and run this, the background color is now orange. The challenge is there's a purple square covered up by the background. Can you change the order of the code so you get to see both the purple and the blue squares? So now this is what I was talking about with myself before. If you were able to get bubble 4 right and you understood the concept in 4, you should be able to figure out the challenge here. The only hint that I'll give you, because I don't want to give it away, is that the code runs from the top to the bottom. So first, I'm going to put a little purple, I guess this will be purple, a purple square at 50-50, right? Then I put the background on line 3 and just kind of think about what's going on over there, right? It goes in order. And then finally, I put the blue square on top again, right? So that's a little hint I'll give. This video is running pretty long. Let's move on to all the way to bubble 9. I want to give you 6, 7, and 8 to try on your own. If you have questions, please reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help, but I don't want to give everything away. Let's go to bubble 9 because there's a couple important things I want to talk about here. This is perhaps the more challenging part of this assignment. Okay, random numbers, whole big deal over here. Random number chooses a random number between a minimum and a maximum value. You can use this code instead of writing the specific number. If you make your drawings with random numbers, it would look a little bit different every time you run your program. So to do this says to run the program several times to just see how it works. Change the numbers inside of random number and run the code again a few times to see what happens. So here we run it. We see the background is tomato colored. Sure. We filled orange and then we made an ellipse. And if you've done 6, 7, and 8, you'll see an ellipse just makes a circle type thing, or it might be an oval. And it works the same way, by the way. It's X coordinate, Y coordinate, width and height. And by the way, little tip is they try to give you information about what the different arguments are, the different parameters are in the toolbox over here, right? My ellipse has an X, a Y, a W, and an H. That stands for the X coordinate, the Y coordinate, the width, and the height. You can also, if you ever want, by the way, again, if you ever want, you can hover over a block, click to see examples, and it will give you like a whole explanation of how this thing works with, tons of details, all the information, what the X, Y, W, and H is. I won't go through it, but in case there's a block you don't know how it works, either play around with it or, read through that little thing. Let's keep going. So this says run the program several times to see how it works, and then change the numbers inside the random number, and then run the code again a few times. So running through it, it looks like every time I run this, the circle is kind of changing where it is little by little, or sometimes it jumps across the screen, but it's only ever going left to right. So let's zoom in on this block and see what's going on. So I made it, tomato colored background. My fill is orange, and then I make an ellipse. The x coordinate, instead of just a number, and this is what they're saying over here, right? I even kind of stumbled on this. You can use this code instead of writing a specific number. What they mean is that ellipse, this first argument here, instead of using a single number that you chose, they put the random number block inside of it. So what that means is for the x coordinate of this ellipse, of this circle, it's going to choose a random number between 0 and 400 and use that as the x coordinate for it. So every time I run the code, it's going to make a tomato background. It's going to fill orange, so the next thing I draw is going to be orange. And then it makes an ellipse whose x coordinate, every time I run, before I make the ellipse, I run the code inside of the parameters there. So it's going to get a random number between 0 and 400. It plugs it in to the x coordinate, and then this is always 200, 50, 50. And so then the circle will be moving around, right? If I switch it to 20 and 100, this is going to make it so it'll never really go to the right side of the screen because I'm stuck between the numbers 20 and 100. So if I run now, you're going to see the circle is just stuck it's never moving over to this side because the random number is stuck between 20 to 100. So it'll move around a little bit, but not all the way. Maybe I even want to change this to, what if I change this to negative 50 and 200? If I run this now, it looks like it kind of went off the screen a little bit. Well, no, that might just be 0. But I run it again. All right, 200's right in the middle. Let's keep going. What I want to do, all right, maybe I'll go to negative 100. Right, negative numbers are okay, even though your grid starts at 0, 0 and goes to 400, 400. If you have negative numbers, that just means it exists, but off the screen. I'm trying to get a run. There we go. So the circle was drawn. It exists. It's just off to the left side of the screen because 0 is the side over here. What we could do also is I could actually play around with this even more and go from 0 to 200. I can put another random number in here. Now, the way you do that is you can either go to the math and drag the block into the parameter there, right? Boom. Or if you want, you can just type it in. I could type random number, parentheses, parentheses, and just start typing in, maybe I'll go from, I don't know, 100 to 300. And so now what's going to happen is the y is going to get randomized every time. And you did it right, by the way, if it switches to a block after you're done typing it in there. So now it's going to kind of jump all over the screen because the x is changing between 0 to 200 and the y is changing from 100 to 300. So it's jumping both around left and right and up and down. This video I think is long enough. If you're having issues with bubbles 10 or 11, let me know. And I might even go more into detail on this lesson later for Wednesday's assignment. But that's it. I hope this was helpful.